always do this on your own, but let's just go over some of these and see if we know the answers. There are two places in the Shemona Esrei, which is known as the Amida, where we talk about rain during the winter. The first is mentioning Hashem's greatness and strength. Amongst other praises, we mention that Hashem brings rain. The second is when we request a blessing for the produce and that the year should be blessed. We also ask for dew and rain. Shemona Esrei has 19 brachas. Which number bracha is the mentioning of rain? Not the request, the first one, the mentioning of rain. Which number bracha is that? Well, we've mentioned it many times. That's the second bracha of the Shemona Esrei called Ata Gibar. That is where we mention the rain. We don't request the rain then. And that's what our Mishnah, and that answers the second question. What is the major discussion of our first Mishnah about? It's about when do we start mentioning the rain, not asking for rain. We're not dealing with asking. We're dealing with mentioning rain. And that's in that second bracha of the Shemona Esrei. So it's a major discussion of the first Mishnah and the Gemara. Now, what are the three opinions that the rabbis are arguing about? This I'd like maybe some of you to answer. What are these three opinions in the Mishnah? There's a Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Yehuda. Anyone? Rabbi Eliezer? Could anyone tell us what our Mishnah, the first Mishnah, was the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer?
Rabbi, can I read it from...
Read it. Go for it.
Rabbi Eliezer says the phrase is inserted from the first festival day of the festival of Sukkot.
So we mention it from the first day of Sukkot. In other words, we're talking about mentioning rain, which is praise to Hashem from the first day of Sukkot. What does Rabbi Yeshua say? Anyone?
From Yeshua?
Yehuda?
From the last festival day of the festival of Sukkot.
Okay. So so it's the last day of Sukkot. What does that mean, the last day of Sukkot?
Shmini Atzeres.
Shmini Atzeres. And what is the final opinion? Rabbi Yehuda.
Rabbi Yeshua said to Rabbi Eliezer,
העובר לפני התיבה ביום טוב האחרון של חג האחרון מזכיר ראשון, אינו מזכיר ביום טוב ראשון של פסח.
So what is the opinion? What is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion? Ben, do you want to tell us?
Yeah, if you, the Chazan on the Yom Tov Acharon, on the last day, which is Shmini Atzeret, Maskir mentions, and the first one does not mention.
What does that mean? When do you start mentioning it? Again, we're dealing with when do we start mentioning rain? We had three opinions in the Mishnah. We're just going over, doing a little review now. And welcome, Ezra. Welcome back. I didn't realize that you were out of town. So glad to have you back. So we're just doing a review. We did 2 pages of the Gemara, page 2 and 3, and we're doing a little review. We have we sent out a questionnaire.
Rabbi.
Yes, Moshe.
Not mentioned on the last day also, isn't it on the last day?
Yes, so Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Yehuda both seem to say the same
name. They both have
the same day. I'm just gonna, they both mention on the same day you start mentioning rain. However, the difference is which prayer you mention it. Rabbi Yehuda says it's somewhere in the middle of the day. It's the Musaf. You don't start at the beginning, the night or the morning. You start at the Musaf. That's Rabbi Yehuda's insight. Okay, question number 4. The Gemara asks, where is the basis that our Gemara is a continuation from? It should be our Mishnah. That's a mistake. It should say, the Gemara asks, where's the basis that our Mishnah is a continuation from. Let me see if I could change that. You could switch it on your pages. What is the basis? And what's the final concluding answer to that? Initially, the Gemara gave an answer, and it said it's continuing from Tractate Brachos. But then the Gemara says, that sounds a little strange. It's going to continue here in Taanis, which is many tractates later. Many tractates later, it's going to continue from Brachos. It's a whole different Seder, a whole different set of Mishnah, order of Mishnah. So what was the Gemara's answer? That where is it a continuation from? Which tractate? We're on page 2A, if anyone wants to look it up. Even if you forgot, you can still look it up now and find the answer. Where is our Mishnah basing its discussion on? In other words, where did it start from that it mentions, when do you mention rain? Where did it say you have to mention rain? In Tractate Brachos, it did say it, but it sounds strange to push it off so far till Taanis. So therefore, yeah. What do you think, Moshe?
Sukkos? Tractate. I'm not trying to see here.
So the Gemara said it's coming from a statement, Tana Meirosh Hashana Salit. The Tana is the Tana of our Mishnah, which means the author of our Mishnah is a continuation from Rosh Hashanah, from Tractate Rosh Hashanah. What does it say on Rosh Hashanah? He's coming from Rosh Hashanah. And what does it mean he's coming from Rosh Hashanah? In Rosh Hashanah, it says on Sukkot, we are judged about the water. That means the whole world is judged how much water is going to rain. So therefore, it mentions in our tractate Taanis, when do you start mentioning the rain? We just said you're judged about the rain. So when do we start mentioning the rain? It's like a continuation from there. So that's the answer of the Gemara, that it's basing it on Rosh Hashanah. Now, what's interesting is that in many of our tractates, many of our sets of tractates, if you have a whole set of the Shas, normally Rosh Hashanah, Taanis does not come right after Rosh Hashanah. There's a few other tractates, Yuma, Sukkah, Abeya. So the simple understanding is at least it's in the same set of Mishnah, in the same order. So that's good enough. However, it's interesting. The Daf Yomi, they learn Rosh Hashanah and then they go to Taanis. Interestingly enough, so I guess there may be such an opinion that it actually comes right after. Just interesting that it's that they actually do that. They actually learn Taanis right after Rosh Hashanah. But anyway, so. Of course, there are different prints and different prints of the Gemaras. Some of them have different orders, But our Gemara answers that our tractate Taanis, our Mishnah, is coming from a Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. Okay, now the next question: how do we know that rain should be mentioned in prayer? Anyone? Rain mentioned in prayer. Maybe you could, who says you have to mention it there? Just don't say anything about it. So that was also on page 2A. It says in the Shema, to love Hashem, your God, and serve him with all your heart. That refers to prayer. And right afterwards it says, and I will give your rain in its time, the early rain and the late rain, Yeira Umalkush, the early and the late rains. So we have a clear source about davening, which is service of Hashem in the heart, and rain.
That's in the second blessing, isn't it?
In the second paragraph of the Shema.
Yeah, the
Second paragraph of the Shema. So that's it. So we now know that you should mention rain in the prayers. Okay. Now, what are the three keys that Hashem never gave an emissary to run? Anyone?
The rain.
Rain.
Rain, parnasa, tchiyat hametim, and life.
Okay. So you said 4 then.
Yeah.
Now the fourth one is really on the next page. Parnasa.
It's the fifth one that I said is fourth. Yeah.
There's on page 2a, it only mentions 3. Rain, chaya, life, which basically means childbirth, and techias hamesim. These are the 3. Okay, 3 keys. Now, we do know that Elijah and Elisha did get 1 or 2 of those keys. How can we reconcile those stories with our Gemara that says no one can get those keys?
Because they were very close to Hashem, close enough that he trusted that they can handle it.
Well, more than that. Not that he trusted they could handle it. He didn't give it to them. They were so davuk, so attached to him, that it wasn't like he gave it to them. It was like they were with him. They were utilizing their connection, that they sort of were twisting his arm, so to speak, twisting Hashem's arm. Yeah. They were so attached to Hashem. That's one of the answers that we gave. But we did have another answer from Rashi and Taisvis, that temporarily Hashem does give those keys away. That was one of the answers. Another one was that Hashem doesn't give all 3 at once to anyone. Okay, now we jump to page 2b. The Gemara says that in the West, they would say a 4th key that Hashem never gave an emissary. What does the West mean? Now we're on page 2b. Page 2b, it says in the West.
The West is Bavel.
No, the West is Eretz Yisrael.
West is Israel.
Eretz Yisrael.
Eretz Yisrael, because Bavel is considered to be the primary.
Bavel is in the East. So in the West, when the Gemara says in the West, and the Gemara often does mention about the West, so the Gemara always refers to the West as Eretz Yisrael. Now, in the West, they would have a 4th key. What was that 4th key? So Ben already mentioned it. And that is Parnasa. Sustenance. That's a key that Hashem, so to speak, micromanages. Okay, now what is the practical difference if Rabbi Eliezer comes up with his opinion about when to mention rain from the laws of Lulav or from the laws of the water pouring ceremony? Did I spell that wrong? Nice.
That's correct.
It looks okay.
What? Looks wrong.
Spelled it correctly.
I spelled it correctly? Yeah. Okay. So what is the practical difference if he comes up with his opinion from the lulav or from nisoch hamayim, the water pouring ceremony?
Libation, wouldn't it be? It would be from the water libation, because it's poured out.
Yeah. So you don't like my word, water pouring ceremony, water libation ceremony? You'd rather? Okay.
Yes.
Nisoch. Okay, we'll do that. Okay. So what is the difference? What's the practical difference?
The lulav we use from the first day. The libation, I think, is not from the first day.
Okay, you're pretty hot. What's the close? Very close. when would we start? What would the practical difference be when we mention the rain, thanking Hashem for the rain? We either learn it, Rabbi Eliezer says you either learn it from lulav or from the water libation ceremony. So if he's learning it that you do it on the first day, and he would either learn it from lulav or nisuch hamayim, what would be the practical difference? So the Gemara said a difference. The Gemara said, yes?
The problem is that if you do it while you're dumping rain on a holiday, which is sort of a negative, and so therefore they're saying that that's not something that you would want to have.
Right. We wouldn't want the rain to be on. That was a problem with Rabbi Eliezer's view that Rabbi Yoshua didn't like. But Rabbi Eliezer sticks to his grounds, and he says, no, I have no problem mentioning rain, even on Sukkot, because I'm not asking
for it. I'm just mentioning.
I'm only mentioning it. So the thing is that he either learns his source from lulav or from the nisuch hamayim, the water libation. What would be the practical difference?
If you're learning it from lulav, it has to be during the day. If you're learning it from the water libation, it could be at night.
That's right. That's a very good, correct answer. Thank you, Yehuda. So water libation was done. It could be done at night. We had different opinions as to what that means. It could be done at night. We said Rashi holds it could be at night. You prepare the water. You draw the water at night. Taisva says, according to Taisva, you could even pour it at night. You could pour the water, even though officially it was poured by day when they brought the daily sacrifice, the korban tamid, the regular daily sacrifice. But nevertheless, it could have been done at night. And so, if so, then when do you start mentioning rain in our prayers? It either starts at the night before, which would be based on the water libation ceremony, or you would start by the daytime, maybe in the shacharis, because that's when you start lulav. If he's learning it from lulav, then you would start by the day, by the shacharis. So that's the Gemara says this practical difference. Taisvus adds another difference. He says if Rabbi Eliezer learns it from lulav, there's a reason why he's learning it from lulav. Because the more logical place to learn it from is the water libation ceremony. So if he learns it from lulav, that probably means that Rabbi Eliezer does not pour the water libation, in his opinion, on the first day of Sukkot. It ends up that he would hold you pour it from a different day, maybe the second day. But he would hold that you don't pour it on the first day. Because if you did pour it on the first day, Rabbi Eliezer would hold that you would learn mentioning rain from the water libation ceremony, since it's a much more powerful proof. Anyway, that's a taisvus. I don't know if we mentioned it, but okay. Number 10 was, what does the Gemara conclude about question number 9 as to where Rabbi Eliezer bases his opinion on? Anyone know what the final answer was? Where does Rabbi Eliezer base his opinion on? Lulav or nisuch hamayim? Anyone know what he bases it on?
I think he bases on lulav, the first day.
He bases it on lulav, yes. And question number 11 is, so what are the sources that he bases it on on lulav? And he holds you start mentioning rain on the day, shacharis, not in Ma'ariv. I just want to mention, by the way, that this does have practical application when you start Mashiv HaRuach, because if a person messes up, and says the wrong thing, they would have to go back the Shemona Esrei and do it again in many, many situations. So it's very practical to know these halachas. Of course, we're learning the source of the halacha, but there are practical applications even in today's day and age when we don't have the Beis Hamikdash and we're not pouring the water, the nisuch hamayim, but there are very practical halachas that people it has an impact, and we're going to see even today going to learn a little more about it. Okay, so what are the two sources that Rabbi Avahu uses as the potential sources for the answer that we just gave, that Rabbi Eliezer bases it on lulav? What are his sources that he bases it on lulav?
The four minim need also water.
So one would be I think what you mean to say is that it's a brisa. He has a brisa where he says it, where Rabbi Eliezer says, I learn it from lulav. He says clearly, when you start taking the lulav, that's when you mention rain. So you see, he learns it from lulav. Why does he mention that you start mentioning rain when you take the lulav, right? That was the brisa. The brisa says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer Misha'as Netilas Lulav. At the time you start taking the lulav, that's when you mention the rain. So he's seemingly giving a good hint to us that that's his source of when to of where he's learning it from, because he's telling you as that's the time frame. When do you start is the lulav. So he's probably learning it from lulav. So that would be one option of how we know that it's he's learning it from lulav. And the other way of how Rabbi Avo knows he's learning it from lulav is not from the brisa, but it says Gemara Gomer La. What does that mean? Gemara Gomer La. He has an oral tradition. So he either knows Rabbi Avahu knows that Rabbi Eliezer bases it on lulav, either from a brisa or from an oral tradition. That's the two options. Okay, and now number 12, question number 12. The brisa, which is this statement that the Gemara brings, the brisa brings 6 opinions as to when we begin mentioning rain in the Shemona Esrei. We have Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yehuda name of Rabbi Yeshua. So we've got six opinions when we mention circle the days of Sukkot that at least one rabbi holds you should start mentioning rain. So now we got to figure this out. Who holds day one? Does anyone hold day one you start mentioning rain?
Eliezer.
Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, very good. What about day 2? Who would hold? Would anyone hold on day 2 that you start mentioning rain?
Rabbi Yeshua. Would it be
Rabbi Yehuda, I think.
Rabbi Yehuda.
Yeah. Which Rabbi Yehuda? I have 2 Rabbi Yehudas here. There's a Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, there's a Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Yeshua.
In the name of Rabbi Yeshua.
So, what does he say? Where do you see that he says the second day?
I don't see it. I'm just saying.
You're guessing. Anyone else? Anyone holds the second day you'd start mentioning rain?
Is that Rabbi Yehuda from the Mishnah, Rabbi?
Well, I don't think so. Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah did not say the second day. Right?
So I gather my answer was wrong. So it must be Rabbi Yeshua ben Braisa.
Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira.
Yehuda ben Beseira.
That is correct. Why does he say the second day? Because he says the water libation is learned from the second day. There's an extra letter in the wording of the sacrifices, of hinting to the water libation. So he says this, the water libation was on the second day. So seemingly he holds. So he basically says that you start mentioning the rain on the second day. That's Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Anyone hold the third day? Day 3, anyone?
I don't know, but I know who is the 6th day.
Okay, the 6th day. Who's that?
Rabbi Akiva.
Rabbi Akiva. Good, very good. We got the 6th day there, and the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I don't think we have any opinions for. We've got the 6th day. And anyone for day 7?
I guess Rabbi Yeshua.
Well, you are correct that there are 2 opinions as to what Rabbi Yeshua holds. He either holds the 7th day or the 8th day. It's very unclear, and the commentaries debate about this. Rabbi Yeshua says that it's the when you put down the lulav. So he says when you put down the lulav, this is Rabbi Yeshua of the Brisa, not Rabbi Yeshua of the Mishnah. Rabbi Yeshua of the Brisa. He says when you put it down, he's either saying you put it down on the seventh day, meaning that's the day that you mention rain, or he's saying you put it down at the end of the seventh day and we start on the eighth day. So Rabbi Yeshua might be the seventh day. Okay, very good. And let's see, and how about day 8? Anyone for day 8? When would you start mentioning rain? Anyone hold day 8? Shmini Atzeret.
I think it's also Rabbi Yeshua, the other Rabbi Yeshua.
So it's Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Yeshua for sure, and possibly even the plain Rabbi Yeshua, like I just mentioned. Okay, so it seems like we now what did Rebbe hold? Rebbe seems to hold the same. Rebbe holds that. What does Rebbe hold? Rebbe says, Misha shemafsik l'she'ela kach mafsik le'haskara, that you don't mention it. He doesn't say clearly, really, when you start mentioning the rain. When you stop, he says you stop for both. You definitely don't mention it when it's not good. He holds the last day like Rabbi Yeshua. Okay, now we've done, so no one holds day 9. That's the conclusion. No one holds day 9. All right, now 13, if the resurrection of the dead is mentioned all year round, even though it's not necessarily the time for it, why would anyone have a problem mentioning rain all year round, even though it's not the right time for it?
Well, you don't want rain when it's going to be harmful.
So the term in the Gemara is the resurrection of the dead. The Gemara uses a term that kula yoimaz manehi, that resurrection of the dead is all year round. We want it. We want it all year round. That it's the rain, along what Mordechai just said, the rain is not wanted, but the resurrection of dead, even though it's not maybe necessarily the right time, but we want it all year round. And because we want it all year round, or it could happen any time of the year, according to Rabbi Yeshua, so therefore it's always its time. So there is a difference there. Resurrection of the dead could be mentioned all year round, but rain it's not its time, it's not wanted, and it's not supposed to happen. Okay, number 14. What are the 2 hints in the Torah for the water ceremony that are mentioned on page 2b? So we're just finishing up 2b now, and there are 2 hints in the Torah. The Gemara mentions these hints for the water libation ceremony. What are the 2 hints?
I think one was that the word water is
extra
found
letters
from the letters M, Yud, Mem, Yud, Mem, that it means water.
That's correct. And the other hint was unesacheha. It's libations, plural.
Yeah.
So that's the second hint that we see. There's a hint that there's an extra libation that's water. Okay, we're going to stop here from the review. So at least we did page 2.
Where did you get those questions from?
I made them up last night. Were they good?
They're very good, but usually they are sent to us so we can answer them by looking it up.
Well, I need to get people warmed up a little. You can answer 3A.
Oh, you mean we still have to answer it?
There's still 15 to 26 that I didn't answer.
Oh.
I'm just warming you up to make sure we don't forget.
Are you going to send us those questions then?
I already sent them. They're all there. I sent it all.
Oh, I didn't see it. No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah, I sent an email. Okay, let me stop the share. Okay, so let's go back to the Gemara. I want to go over yesterday's Gemara a little. There's a lot to talk about, really. So we're on page. We really reached page 4a. We did the 3b yesterday, and I think we reached. Did we actually start? Well, maybe we just got to the bottom line.
Yeah,
But,
the bottom line.
Bottom line of 3b. Okay, but anyway, let's go over some of the Gemaras that we did yesterday. So we mentioned that Rabbi Chanina's set of laws. Rabbi Chanina put together a group of laws that are based on these discussions. And Rabbi Chanina said that in the summer, if you say Mashiv Haruach, if you mention wind, is that okay? Do you have to repeat Shemona Esrei, go back to the original, to that bracha? If you mention wind, you say Mashiv Haruach. So he says in the summer, if you said Mashiv Haruach, it's not a problem. And the reason for this is
that there is ruach all year round.
Wind is never withheld. Because it's never withheld, doesn't matter if you mention it or you don't mention it. So even though we do say in the winter, Mashiv Haruach Merda Geshem, but Mashiv Haruach is not the important part of it. In Mashiv Haruach, it's never withheld anyway, wind. And we said, what about if you said Merid Hageshem in the summer, that you want rain in the summer? That we don't ask for rain, but we mention it. Hashem brings rain, and you mention that in the summer. So Rabbi Chanina says, then you would have to go back and fix up your mistake. And we spoke yesterday about what that means, going back to fix up your mistake. We did the Shulchan Aruch yesterday, and we saw that if you mentioned rain, so you mentioned
have to do it over
wrong
again, the whole thing.
So if you finished the bracha, you would have to go all the way back. You finished Machaya HaMesim, the second bracha of the Shemona Esrei. You would have to go all the way back to the beginning of the Shemona Esrei. Because you mentioned rain at a time that rain is not, but we don't want rain. So you'd have to go all the way back to the beginning of the Shemona Esrei. Why? Why can't you go back to the beginning of the second bracha? Start it over. Start over the second bracha. The answer we saw yesterday was that the first three brachas of Shemona Esrei are one chunk. They go together. If you didn't finish the second bracha, you're still in the middle of it, then you could restart from the beginning of the second bracha. You go back to the beginning of the second bracha. But once you finish it wrong, it's like you skipped out that second bracha, and you need to now start all over from square one. You have to start all over from the beginning. You ruined that second bracha of Shemona Esrei. You now have to start all over. If you didn't finish it yet, you can still fix it up by going back. That's the person who says rain in the summer. He would have to go back, depending on where he reached. He would have to go back, either to the beginning of that bracha or to the beginning of the Shemona Esrei. Now, what about in the winter, if he doesn't mention wind? If he doesn't say Mashiv Haruach. So if you don't mention wind, again, we said it doesn't matter. Wind is never withheld. But what about if he doesn't say rain in the winter? In the winter, we need rain. We mention rain. We praise Hashem that He brings rain. Mashiv Haruach Geshem. We made a whole prayer about it on Shmini Atzeres. So if you don't mention rain in the winter,
you go back to Mechalchel Chaim, isn't it?
You have to go back to say rain. Now, here is an interesting halacha that we saw in Shulchan Aruch yesterday, and that is, yes.
If you say Molid Tal by accident, you're okay.
You're okay.
Because Tal is a form of
Tal is fine.
It's also all year round. Yeah.
So we're about to mention that. We mentioned it yesterday, and I'm about to say that. But in the meantime, if a person didn't say anything, and he didn't say rain, and he didn't say tal either, he didn't say dew, then there's a big problem, which is the Nusach Ashkenaz during the summer. They don't mention Tal and they don't mention rain. So if someone followed that in the winter and they didn't mention rain, so they're going to have to go back. But it depends on where. Where do you go back to? First of all, in this situation, you didn't say anything wrong yet. You just didn't say what you needed to. You need to mention rain and you didn't. It's not like you said something wrong. So you need to mention rain. So if you finish that second bracha of the Shemona Esrei, but you did not yet start the third bracha, you can still mention rain where you are holding. You can mention rain right here and say, Mashiv Aruch Merda Geshem. You finished the bracha, but you didn't say anything wrong yet, so you don't have to like go back and take out what you said wrong. No, you just didn't mention rain. So here you finished the second bracha, but you didn't start yet the third bracha. So according to halacha, you're still in the middle of that second bracha, that with regard to the fact that you didn't ruin it, and you could still mention rain here. So that's an interesting halacha that you could say Mashiv Aruch Merda Geshem after the second bracha, as long as you didn't say Ata from Ata Kadosh. You didn't say the word Ata for the third bracha. You can still mention rain but if you already said Ata, now you missed out in mentioning rain. You got to go back all the way to the beginning of Shemona Esrei, because the first three brachas are one chunk. Now, what Ezra mentioned, which we talked about yesterday, is that the Nusach Sfar does have a big benefit. And that is, they're used to in the summer saying Merid Hatol, they mentioned dew, and mentioning dew, which is mentioning dew is considered good enough, just like mentioning rain in the winter. In other words, it's ideal to mention rain in the winter, but if you mention dew, you don't have to go back. It's only when you don't mention anything you'd have to go back. So if you mention dew, then you're all set, and it's not a problem. Of course, the ideal is to mention rain, and it's talked about in the commentaries. Is why is dew considered? We mentioned it yesterday. Why is dew considered good enough?
Because that's going to come down anyhow.
And dew is anyway going to come. That's true. But they mention that it's good enough. And I'm trying to remember what we said yesterday. We said
it's moisture.
It's moisture. And
could it be that there's no negative to dew? Rain sometimes is a negative.
Or wind, yeah. But dew was always, well, we said there's dew of bracha, and that we did say that dew sometimes is nothing, or sometimes bracha.
But it's never a negative.
Here. Okay. I'm just trying to remember what exactly the wording of the Shulchan Aruch was, but in any event, the dew works. If you mention dew, it's considered good enough, and the moisture, it's beneficial, obviously, to the world, and so maybe as Ezra said about the moisture, brings moisture into the world. But in any event,
but the wording for it, I think, is ma'avir haruach u'mafriach hatal.
Now that's the next thing. Now that's the surprising statement here. Okay. That's a very surprising statement. Now the conclusion of the Gemara, the conclusion of Rabbi Hanina's statement is something very little surprising. He says, not only that, but even if you say that the wind should not blow and the dew should not come, you don't have to go back, because the dew and the wind doesn't really affect anything negative. In other words, we don't it's never going to be withheld. So you don't have to worry about it. Now, what I wanted to talk about a little today was the issue of a person who's not sure if they remembered to mention rain or not. So in Shulchan Aruch, we saw that there's a concept of having a getting yourself familiarized with mentioning it. And the Shulchan Aruch mentions that in 30 days, based on a Gemara Yerushalmi, that if you mention it for 30 days, then you got yourself familiarized with mentioning it. And if you're not sure after 30 days if you mentioned it or not, you assume you mentioned what you're supposed to because you already familiarized yourself 30 days with it. You have a chazaka, you have a assumption that you mentioned the right thing. So let me just share with you an interesting thing. So there was a rabbi, very famous rabbi, who he said, listen, 30 days is like mentioning it 90 times. So he said, let me say the words 90 times, and it'll be like I did it 30 days. In this way, if I have any questions, I have no problem. So he just said it in one, he took 10 minutes of his time, and he said 90 times, and he said 90 times. He mentioned Masha Baruch Mer Geshem, and he said maybe if the words before, the sentence before, sentence after, and he mentioned it 90 times, and he said it's good enough. And he said, "What's the so the question is, does that really work?" And of course, it's a big debate among the halachic authorities, and he based it on a Gemara. What was his basis? He claimed it definitely works. Why? He says, well, there's a law about a shar hamuad. If a ox gores 3 times, we assume we give him a status, I should say. We give him the status of now he's a goring ox. And he's called a muad. He has different legalities about, first of all, a shar hamuad, well, if it kills 3 times, gores and kills, no, even if it kills once, it deserves a death penalty. But if it gores 3 times, he has to pay the full penalty of any damage that it does. And the rules of a shar hamuad kick in. Now the Gemara, the law is that if he gores 3 times in 3 days, then he's considered a shar hamuad. What happens if he does them all in 1 day, gores 3 times in 1 day? So the Gemara says for sure he's considered a muad. So he says the same thing here. If I take 30 days to mention, if I take 30 days to familiarize myself with my Shemash Baruch Mer Geshem, and I'm considered for sure, I say for sure if I do it all in 1 day, for sure I am considered familiarized with Masha Baruch Mer Geshem. He says it's the same thing, just like the shar. If you kirev negichaisav, if you put them very close to each other, the Gemara says that's for sure considered a muad. For sure considered an animal that's a goring animal. So he says the same thing is if I say Masha Baruch Mer Geshem 90 times, I'm for sure a person who's used to saying it 90 times.
It's engraved in your brain.
Yeah, this was his logic. Now, some of the commentaries argue with that logic. They say it's not the same. If you gore and you gore 3 times in the same day, goring is not getting the animal used to goring. It's revealing that this is a goring ox. It's not an issue of familiarizing itself with goring. It's an issue of revealing. So if it reveals itself in 3 days, it also could reveal itself even more so if it does it all in 1 day. It reveals how much of a goring ox it really is, that it's really a goring ox. But when it comes to familiarizing with something, it could be that it takes time to gel and to get you used to it. So according to that, if you follow that, that way of the stream of thought, So it comes out that it doesn't help if you do it all in one day, because it takes time for it to be absorbed into your brain, into your mind. The goring is all about revealing. It's not about changing your familiarity. It's not about getting you used to doing something. So the commentaries debate if this works or not, and it's discussed in Shulchan Aruch. It's discussed in the code of Jewish law. If a person should do it or he shouldn't do it. So the bottom line is it's debatable. But the halacha element of it is that within the first 30 days after Shmini Atzeres, we assume that you did what you're used to from before. After 30 days from Shmini Atzeres, then we can assume that you said the Mashiv Haruach U'Mered HaGeshem. And we saw an interesting thing yesterday in Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, that even if you messed up once or twice, and you had to repeat Shemona Esrei, or you made a mistake, 30 days is good enough, even with a few mistakes, because in general 30 days is a time, the Gemara Yerushalmi says, that a person gets familiarized with this new with the Mashiv Haruach U'Mered HaGeshem, and therefore it's going to be okay. Now, if you daven Nusach Sfard, you do not, or Nusach Ari, you do not have a problem after Shmini Atzeres. Even if you're not sure what you said, it's fine. Or even if you are sure that you said the wrong thing, Mashiv Haruach U'Mered HaGeshem, it's fine. The halacha really applies for Nusach Ashkenaz, Nusach Sfard, and Nusach Ari. It applies really Pesach time. For a month after Pesach, after the first day of Pesach, when we mention Tfilas Tal, if you said Mashiv Haruach U'Mered HaGeshem, then that's when you have to repeat Shemona Esrei. And if you're not sure, so then you have the first 30 days, there's an issue of you might have made a mistake, you might have said the wrong thing in the first 30 days. We assume you said what you're used to, what you're familiar with, and you're familiar with mentioning rain. And in the summer, you're not allowed to mention rain. And therefore, this would apply if a person said it theoretically 90 times and he mentioned the Moirid Hatol instead of the Mashiv Haruach U'Mered HaGeshem, he could familiarize himself with it. According to those opinions, it actually works and could do such a thing. But seemingly in Shulchan Aruch, it's better not, because there are other opinions that hold that it doesn't. But anyway, the bottom line is after 30 days, you are familiarized with saying the right thing, and then you wouldn't have any questions. So this is the practical halacha of these rules. The commentaries discuss, why do we mention things that do not play a role, that never are withheld? Why do we mention do, like the same talu mater levracha, and the Nusach Sfard and Nusach Harim say moirid hatol? Why do we mention the do? And the Nusach, and also we mention wind, even though it's also not withheld. Mashiv Haruach U'Mered HaGeshem. U'Mered HaGeshem is the main thing, but why do we mention the Mashiv Haruach? So commentaries, they try to come up with an explanation of what the purpose, what the reason of mentioning things that are not, even though they're not really withheld, and the idea that they come up with is the fact that do is actually a blessing and it's needed, so therefore it's mentioned in the prayer for rain. When we ask for rain, it's actually mentioned there according to all texts, all customs. We mention and we ask for dew, because dew is a necessity, and it's not like the same. It's not in the same category as wind, and therefore, when it comes to wind, we only mention it. It's almost like it's not. It's emphasizing the fact that the dew is much more valuable than the wind, and that's along those lines. They discuss. They mention that. Okay. Now, the Gemara continued, and it said,
Rabbi,
yes.
Rabbi, wind has some pluses too.
Yes, it does. It does.
One, he pushes the clouds, and two, he dries out the moisture after the rain.
So wind is
So it's good
beneficial.
before and after, you know.
Right, right. Now it said that the wind is beneficial in the winter.
For the snow to dry
But
out. Yeah.
for the rain.
Or for the rain.
Yeah, the moisture, too much moisture.
Okay,
So the
yeah,
wind
to
was
dry out
beneficial. I
the
think that's what we
moisture.
said yesterday. But like in the summer, it sounded like it's not beneficial. But our Gemara mentions that that there are benefits for wind and for dew. But anyway, these are the discussions in the commentaries, Shainim even, about what the reason for the custom for the actual wording of our Shemona Esrei, why we mention it. But our Gemara itself did discuss what is it beneficial for, and is it a curse or is it a blessing? So, for example, the next piece of Gemara that we did was that how could you say that the winds in the clouds are never withheld? Hashem says, "I will withhold the heavens," and they translate that to mean withholding the heavens means withholding the clouds in the winds. So, and we just said that clouds and winds are never withheld. So the Gemara says that the Gemara answers that it's not a contradiction because it depends if it's a cloud that is the charfi or the afli. The charfi are the late clouds that come. The charfi or the afli. Charfi are the clouds that come before the rain. They are never withheld. The ones that come after the rain and they are beneficial, they are sometimes withheld. And then we said winds are sometimes winds. One place says it's sometimes withheld, sometimes in another place it says it's never withheld. So the Gemara answered, it depends if it's the normal wind or the extraordinary wind. The extraordinary winds are sometimes withheld, and nevertheless, the rabbis didn't obligate you to mention it because we don't need the extraordinary winds. The regular winds are enough. And the Gemara asks, "What do you mean the extraordinary winds are needed for winnowing?" The Gemara answered that you could use a sieve for winnowing. And then the Gemara said that the clouds and the winds are second best to rain. They're almost as good as rain. So, so the Gemara asks, "What are we talking about? What does that mean that they're almost as good as rain?" And the Gemara explained the ones that are after the rain. But the Gemara said, "What do you mean? The ones after the rain are almost as good as rain? In other words, they're very beneficial. Don't we have in the curses that we say Yitein Hashem as matar artzecha avak v'yafer, that in the curses in the portion of Ki Savai, in the portion of Ki Savai in Deuteronomy, it mentions that Hashem will cause the dirt to go up and onto your grains, and it's going to ruin your grain. So it sounds like it's very bad for the grain, for the produce." And the Gemara answered that it depends if the rain came very pleasantly or the rain came with force, and if the rain came very pleasantly, it's not going to cause the dirt so the winds afterwards, they're not going to cause the dirt to come and attach itself to the grains. But if it comes very rough, very strong, then it's a problem, and it causes dirt to come, and that's a curse. And then we said Zikr the basar mitra kabitra, that wind after the rain is almost like rain, and the clouds after the rain is almost like rain. The sun after the rain is almost like two rains. So it sounds like these are all good things. The Gemara said, anything bad? If anything happened, is there anything? So the Gemara said, yeah, when we have some type of either thunder at night or gilhi delelia, or some type of lights at night. I guess the Rabbeinu Gershom translates it to mean thunder, lightning, not thunder. Lightning at night is considered bad, or it's not beneficial, and then that's called gilhi delelia, at least the way he translates it, gilhi delelia. And the other term or the other opinion, what that means is if the moon shines at night, which I don't know exactly what that means. It's always shines. So I don't know exactly that somehow some type of light at night, which Zrichas Halayla, Tosfos learns. I'm not exactly sure how to translate that. But,
lightning sounds good.
Yeah, the only thing is the Gemara doesn't use the word for light, the typical word for lightning. It uses this gilhi dalil. You normally would use barak, brakim.
Right.
So it's a little surprising. So the Rabbeinu Gershom wants to translate it that way, but it does seem surprising that the Gemara doesn't use that word. So it sounds like the shine of the moon, but I mean every night the moon shines. So and that's bad. That's not beneficial. Maybe it just means maybe it means always the shine from the moon is not beneficial. But I don't know. Then it says Shimsha Deveni Karchi, that when the sun shines between the clouds after the rain, that is not considered beneficial. And so these are the two things that are not beneficial. But otherwise, according to Rav Yehuda, all these things that come after the rain are always beneficial. And then we mentioned the final thing was that the snow is good like 5 rains. Snow is so beneficial, it's like 5 rains. Okay, we got to stop here. Sorry, I could be a little late. Sei gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye, everyone.